experience, where we talk about how you can leverage your expertise through digital learning programs so you can create impact, scale, and live the lifestyle you desire. And this week, in this Tuesday talk, I'm going to talk about one of the big problems that I so often see with people trying to create courses, trying to take the knowledge out of their head and leverage their expertise. And this problem is what I call kitchen sink syndrome. So I'm going to talk about how to avoid this kitchen sink syndrome. So let's jump into it. Let's find out what kitchen sink syndrome is. So, what is it? How do we avoid it? Okay. So, kitchen sink syndrome is this thing that, for me, I suppose it's a curse of an expert. You know, as an expert, we have so much knowledge. We've developed a huge amount of knowledge over so many years, and the challenge then is trying to give that knowledge to people. And the curse is that we often try and give too much information, and you end up with this huge thing, and giving too much information creates this cognitive overload. Basically, we're just giving too much information that results in basically the learner becoming overwhelmed. We've cooked their brains. They can't take any more information in. And I see this problem, as I said, coming from a position of love. It's the curse of the expert, because they want to share all of their knowledge. But the problem is that trying to share all of it at one time is where the challenges lie. It's where the kitchen sink syndrome comes in. Because, as I said, the learner becomes overwhelmed. And then when they become overwhelmed, they disengage. And that is certainly the thing that we do not want to have happen. We do not want people to disengage from the learning experience. Because as soon as they disengage, they switch off, and they're not going to learn, they're not going to take on board the valuable knowledge that you're sharing, and they're just not going to get the impact that is required. It's a huge, huge challenge. But it also becomes a challenge for the course creator, because, as I said, the curse of the expert. We have so much knowledge, we have so much information. And often, what I see, another, I suppose, a challenge that comes from this kitchen sink syndrome is the analysis paralysis. And it's like, well, hang on, what do I include? Do I include this or don't I include this? And nothing happens because you're in this analysis paralysis and you don't move forward. The challenge to create a course becomes even bigger. And as it becomes harder and harder, well, we're less likely to pursue it and less likely to move forward and actually take action with it. Because what we're looking at is there's no clear path. You know, we're trying to take people from point A to B, but because there is just no clear path as part of that process. So, really, to avoid this, a couple of things that we need to do. One of those is to start with the end in mind. Have a clear destination. Okay, we need someone to do X, and as an expert, you know, you need to think about, okay, what are those steps they're going to take? And we're not going to get someone to being a master or an expert immediately. There's going to be incremental lessons and incremental learning happening along the way. And you need to break that down and think about, okay, if I'm taking someone through a process, and you think about, okay, you want to teach them about sales. Well, you're not going to teach them about sales, and they're not going to become a sales master just after one short program. They'll need to learn this, and then they're going to learn this, and they're going to continue to learn as they go through. So you need to think about the end in mind, not the ultimate goal, but the goals, the short-term goal. Okay, how are we going to get them to that short-term goal? Then also what we need to have a clear and defined process. Okay, this is our process that we use when we're talking about how we get people to leverage their expertise. Our process, we get you to nail your niche. We get you to craft your pitch, design your experiences, promote your program, build your assets, set up your systems, launch your program. Bang, bang, bang. Follow these processes and you'll do it. It's simple. And giving that clear, defined process makes it very easy for me as the course creator. Okay, this is what we're teaching. And it's very easy for the learner to go, right, this is what we're doing. But what you also do as part of this process is then to look at each of those steps in that process and then go, right, well, what are the sub steps within that process? So, for example, when we talk about nailing your niche, just recently finished our 7-day challenge, which talked about to nail your niche, you need to know the 5 P's of how to nail your niche, the 5 P's, having about around your passion or your purpose, position, the persona, the problem or pains, the prize. Okay. And so we've got those sub-steps. When we talk about craft your pitch, that's where we bring in the think craft model and we go, right, we need to have these core models in place when we design your experience, when you're building your assets, when we're setting up systems. All of those have defined steps underneath them. So you need to have that clear and defined process. Having that clear and defined process. And that process should be focusing on the core, should be focusing on the core elements that need to happen. If you think about the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, 20% of effort results in 80% of the outcomes. Just like 20% of the information we're giving is going to provide 80% of the transformation. So we don't need to worry about all of the other stuff that people need. We just need to focus on the core. And one of the ways that we do that is to create these powerful visual models. And we look at using the Think Craft model, where we take people through and we get them to create the results, create the answers, create the process, and create the targets. And we do that, and that gives us these powerful models, powerful visual models, and the process is then stepped out. So you don't end up with this kitchen sink syndrome. You don't end up with this analysis paralysis. You end up with a very defined process, and then you can go through each step in the process, define those sub steps, and bang, there you go. You've mapped out your program so simply and easily. It gives you clarity. Because you've got these visuals, you know the defined process, it gives you some clarity. And if you're clear and you're able to focus on the core and able to cut the volume down in the volume of learning, it becomes so much easier for your learners. And as a result, you're going to then get better outcomes. It's going to be so much easier to have a clear path to take your learners from problem to prize. There's going to be less roadblocks along the way. It's going to be a very clear defined path, very clear defined process. The learners can see what that process is. They can see the prize at the end, and they understand the steps they need to go along the way. As a result, they're not overwhelmed with all of this information. So the cognitive overload doesn't happen. They're not burnt out. They're not disengaged. So there's more chance of them getting to the prize. So to avoid kitchen sink syndrome, develop a clear and defined process. Think about the start in mind, take people through to get them from problem to prize, and think about what are those steps that they need to put into place to do that. And that is the way that you avoid the kitchen sink syndrome. And as you're doing it, always asking yourself, is this helping to achieve the prize? Because one of the challenges is that always, I've spent 24 years working in learning design, developing learning programs, working with subject matter experts, helping them extract that valuable IP out of their head. I've been doing this for quite a while now. And I know that one of the challenges is always that extra bit of knowledge, that stuff going, oh, how about we put this in? We'll put this in, we'll put this in. And this stuff tries to creep back in. So you've always got to be asking yourself, is this helping to achieve the prize? So as you go through your process, going, is this going to help me achieve the prize? If it's not, then leave it out. Okay? It certainly can be something you can do as a further program, further learning. After they've developed that initial skill, hit that prize, then you can look at those things. So, key thing to avoid kitchen sink syndrome is ultimately to have that clear and defined process. And as always, as we wrap up this week's Tuesday talk, any questions around kitchen sink syndrome or anything else that we've done, or any other questions you might have around designing, developing, delivering a course or a learning experience, please drop your comments in the chat below, whether that's on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. Drop it in the chat below, and we'll be happy to answer, happy to share some of our knowledge and help you out along the way. And if you want to, join our Facebook group and share more of the knowledge that we're providing through that. Until then, if I don't see you on the Facebook group, then hopefully we'll see you next Tuesday talk. Thank you.